just a lot of anonymity now for critiquing people and pretending that you know people. So I think that becomes complex.
In a shocking turn of events, Julia has allegedly stepped forward exposing some of Tinseltown's most powerful directors, names that have dominated headlines for all the wrong reasons. From Woody Allen, accused of disturbing allegations involving his adopted daughter.
Now at noon, Dylan Farrow is speaking for the first time on television about her assault allegations against her adoptive father, director Woody Allen.
To Roman Polanski, who fled the U.S. after his conviction for assaulting a minor.
For the first time ever, the woman Roman Polanski, when she was 13, has just appeared in court.
Yeah, she was asking an L.A. judge to drop the case against the fugitive director.
And Bryan Singer, accused by multiple young men of predatory behavior.
There are new allegations of misconduct and assault by a prominent filmmaker, Bryan Singer.
Then what about James Toback? Over 200 women have come forward with horrifying stories.
The Los Angeles Times reporting James Toback has been accused of sexually harassing more than 30 women over the last 3 decades.
To Quentin Tarantino, slammed for unsafe working conditions that risked lives on set. And these are just the highlights.
I don't know who this is made for. What
So you mean medium?
Elephant would use this thing.
Right.
And so this elephant tool or elephant inseminator,
Right.
whatever it was.
She quote as calling out the names that make the industry squirm.
I was cast in 3000 before it went to Gary, and then over a happy weekend of having a job, it was sold to Disney, and I was out of a job.
She's been very vocal, but Julia herself has admitted she fears being silenced for spilling the tea on the dirty dealings behind the scenes.
What are the odds when you think about it?
I don't know what they are now. I think it was easier back when I was starting probably than it is now.
Oh.
I think so. I think so. People were nicer.
Why is she speaking out now? And what exactly does she know about these so-called big directors that's sending shockwaves through La La Land? Let's find out. Word's out that Julia has dropped some major tea, and it might spell big trouble for many legendary directors. Remember back in January when that bombshell Epstein name list leaked from Manhattan? And allegedly, it involved many unexpected names.
Newly released court documents relating to the Jeffrey Epstein. They include associates, friends, and alleged victims of the disgraced billionaire who died in jail 5 years ago.
Let's just say that list had some huge names on it, and with Diddy already behind bars, it's looking like Spielberg and many others might be next in line for a serious spotlight. And if you know Julia, you know she's never been one to shy away from the mess. Her latest comments have people asking just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Rumors have been flying about Spielberg possibly being connected to Epstein's scandals, and the internet, of course, went nuts. Some fans were in total denial while others shrugged. The chatter was intense for days, but eventually died down. Well, not anymore, because Julia Roberts just lit that fire right back up.
More about, him and his life and Amy Irving and what have you than I probably said about my own life.
You know how reporters are? They just can't pass up a chance to stir the pot, especially when there's juicy celeb drama on the line. So the second Spielberg's name started popping up, they went straight to Julia for her take. Julia threw some major shade, hinting that Spielberg might have some dark and creepy interests, stuff that's way beyond anything he's ever brought to the big screen.
I'm not even going to talk about Spielberg. Steven Spielberg is
So, some old pre-production notes from Indiana Jones have surfaced, and let me tell you, they're causing a lot of reactions. The docs show some seriously weird and unsettling ideas thrown around by Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and Lawrence Kasdan while brainstorming the character's backstory. At one point, Lucas suggested a storyline where Indy has a past with a young girl. Originally, she was supposed to have met him when she was around 11, and later they were supposed to reconnect romantically. Yeah, you read that right. They went back and forth about how old she should be, and Lucas even threw out the idea of making her 15. Apparently, 15 was the sweet spot to keep it edgy, but they didn't want to go any higher or the whole thing would lose its appeal. They even debated whether she should be the one to initiate things with Indy. Obviously, people are not happy about this. Fans are grossed out by the whole idea of making a young girl romantically involved with an older guy just to make the story edgier. It's like, seriously, who thought this was a good idea? But But hey, it's Hollywood, right? The place where shady stuff like this happens, where powerful people use their influence to push weird and uncomfortable boundaries. When people found out about this creepy detail, they were not having it.
18-year-old in a relationship with a 27-year-old.
Some fans argue that it's just art and doesn't necessarily reflect the personal lives of Spielberg, Lucas, or Kasdan. Fair point, maybe. But let's be honest, movies do tend to reflect the society they come from, right? So it's possible that some of these weird ideas they had for the Indiana Jones storyline could have been influenced by their own questionable views or behavior. If you think Spielberg's thing with older characters and younger ones was just a one-off, think again. There's chatter that during Jurassic Park, he got pretty close with Ariana Richards. Rumor has it, he sent her caregiver away so they could be alone in her hotel room, supposedly to go over lines or whatever. There are reports that Spielberg put Richards in some uncomfortable situations that messed with her mentally. What started that first night turned into a series of bizarre encounters, with some suggesting Spielberg took advantage of her. Richards, who's been in therapy for years, has been pretty silent about the whole thing, refusing interviews or even discussing the movie. After Jurassic Park, she did a few more films, but eventually ditched Hollywood altogether. Now she's a painter, which could be her way of coping with everything that went down, finding peace through her art.
I get really inspired to paint portraiture, I would say, is my very favorite thing.
Ariana Richards stepped away from acting to escape years of mistreatment by the very people who should have had her back. One of those figures was Polish director Roman Polanski, who just so happens to be friends with Spielberg. I'm not saying there's a direct link, but as they say, birds of a feather flock together. Polanski, much like Spielberg, has his own troubling history when it comes to accusations of inappropriate behavior toward young women. Back on March 10, 1977, Polanski, who was 43 at the time, was arrested in LA on several charges involving 13-year-old Samantha Gailey, now Geimer. The charges included unlawful intercourse with a minor, drugging, sodomy, lewd acts on a child under 14, and giving her a controlled substance. He initially pleaded not guilty to everything, but later took a plea deal where the more serious charges were dropped in exchange for him pleading guilty to unlawful intercourse with a minor.
Yeah, when he wanted to get into jacuzzi, I knew I was in trouble. Like, wait, this is not what he's supposed to be doing.
After undergoing a court-ordered psychiatric evaluation and being placed on probation, Roman Polanski fled from justice in February 1978. He left the United States for England and subsequently France, just hours before his scheduled sentencing. Polanski has since resided mainly in France and has avoided traveling to countries where he might face extradition to the United States. On March 10, 1977, Roman Polanski faced 6 charges related to the drugging and rape of 13-year-old Samantha Jane Gailey, now Samantha Geimer. The charges included unlawful intercourse with a female under 18, of drugs, perversion, sodomy, lewd, and lascivious acts upon a child under 14, and furnishing a controlled substance to a minor. Eventually, Polanski pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of unlawful intercourse with a minor. According to Geimer's testimony to the grand jury, Polanski had asked her mother, a television actress and model, if he could photograph Geimer for the French edition of Vogue, which he was guest editing. Her mother agreed to a private photo shoot. Geimer later testified that she felt uncomfortable during the first session, where she posed topless at Polanski's request, and was hesitant to participate in a second shoot, but ultimately agreed. This second shoot took place at actor Jack Nicholson's home in the Mulholland area of Los Angeles. At the time of the crime, Nicholson was away on a ski trip in Colorado. His girlfriend, Angelica Houston, was there but had left the house, only to return while Polanski and Geimer were still inside. Geimer recalled that Houston became suspicious of what was happening behind the closed bedroom door and started banging on it, but left when Polanski assured her they were just finishing up the photo shoot. Geimer later said, "We did photos with me drinking champagne. Toward the end, it got a little scary, and I realized he had other intentions. I knew I was not where I should be, but I just didn't quite know how to get myself out of there." In a 2003 interview, she recalled that she began to feel uncomfortable after he asked her to lie down on a bed, and described how she attempted to resist. "I said, no, I don't want to go in there. No, I don't want to do this. No!" And then I didn't know what else to do, she stated, adding, "We were alone, and I didn't know what else would happen if I made a scene. So I was just scared, and after giving some resistance, I figured, well, I guess I'll get to come home after this." Geimer testified that Polanski provided champagne that they shared as well as part of a quaalude. And despite her protests, he performed OS on her and penetrated her both vaginally and anally, each time after being told no and being asked to stop. Describing the event in his autobiography, Polanski stated that he did not drug Geimer, that she wasn't unresponsive, and that she did not respond negatively when he inquired as to whether or not she was enjoying what he was doing. The 28-page probation report submitted to the court by Kenneth Fair, his parole officer, and signed by Deputy Irwin Gold, excused his behavior due to his creative genius and being an immigrant from a land with different morals, placed some of the blame on the victim and her mother, and concluded by saying that there was evidence that the victim was not only physically mature, but willing. The officer's report also quoted two psychiatrists' denial of Polanski being a P or S deviant. Claiming to protect Geimer from going through a trial, her attorney arranged a plea bargain. Polanski accepted, and as part of the agreement, the 5 initial charges were dismissed. Instead, he pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of engaging in unlawful S intercourse with a minor. Under the terms of the plea deal, Roman Polanski was initially ordered to report to a state prison in California for a 90-day psychiatric evaluation. However, he was allowed to postpone this to finish filming a project in Europe. While he was in Europe working on the 1979 remake of Hurricane, he was spotted at Oktoberfest in 1977, surrounded by young girls and beer jars.
The moment. Then I realized something was wrong. I was frightened. I didn't know what to do. And I just knew then, it was like, oh, this guy, like, he wants to get his hands on me. Oh my God, what am I gonna do?
Polanski eventually returned to California and began his evaluation at Chino State Prison on December 19, 1977. He was released after just 42 days instead of the full 90. His lawyers were expecting probation at the sentencing hearing, especially since the probation officer, the examining psychiatrist, and even the victim all recommended prison time. However, on January 20th, 1978, Polanski was fired from his role as director of Hurricane. Regarding the proposed sentencing, Judge Lawrence J. Rittenband reportedly hinted to Polanski's attorneys that he intended to send the director to prison and order his deportation. According to the 2008 documentary Roman Polanski, Wanted and Desired, Deputy District Attorney David Wells showed Judge Rittenband photos of Polanski at a party in Munich with young girls, suggesting that Polanski wasn't taking the charges involving the 13-year-old seriously. This interaction would be classified as ex parte communication since Wells was not officially part of the case, but had ties to the state of California. Faced with the looming threat of imprisonment and deportation, Polanski made the decision to flee the United States, heading to England and becoming a fugitive from justice.
That comes as the French-Polish director Roman Polanski, who fled the United States decades ago after admitting to the statutory of a 13-year-old.
Regarding the proposed sentencing, Rittenband said, "On January 30th, Mr. Dalton and Mr. Gunson came to my chambers to discuss Polanski's psychiatric report. I told them that I had carefully read it and that I felt it was superficial, replete with many inaccuracies and factually unsupported conclusions, and was conspicuous more for what it failed to report than what it did report. I believe I used the word whitewash. I stated that there was absolutely no mention in the report of any discussions which the counselors and psychiatrists at Chino had with Mr. Polanski relating to the serious and aggravated charges of drugs and alcohol, sodomy, and oral copulation of the 13-year-old victim. I believe I pointed out to them that a statement in the report that throughout the experience with the victim, Mr. Polanski, seems to have been unaware that he was involving himself in a criminal offense, an isolated instance of naivete, unusual in a mature, sophisticated man, was one of the most fatuous statements in a diagnostic report that I have ever read. I told Mr. Dalton that I did not propose to follow the recommendations, which were for straight probation without any additional time in custody. And the saddest part? All those Hollywood execs totally jumped to Roman Polanski's defense back in the day. At the time, most folks didn't really question why his colleagues were so eager to back him up. But with everything we know now about the darker side of Hollywood, it's clear why those big shots were so quick to fall all over themselves to support their buddy. Later, fans found out that the judge had actually planned to hit Polanski with a crazy 50-year sentence for his crimes. But after a little chat with Polanski's lawyer in chambers, the judge suddenly changed his mind. The lawyer spilled the beans to reporters, saying they were ready to slap him with that harsh sentence instead of just going with the time served they had previously negotiated in the plea deal that the judge had agreed to. Feeling like the judge might bail on the plea deal and go for something tougher, Polanski decided to bounce. He told a friend about his escape plan, and just a day before his sentencing, he fled to London and then off to France, where he's been living ever since.
Polanski got caught and he fled the country to avoid persecution. That's what happened. And he's been a fugitive ever since.
Many fans aren't really surprised by the accusations against Spielberg, especially with his ties to Polanski and that controversial pre-production meeting that led to a 15-year-old female character getting involved with an older guy in the film. It's not exactly a stretch to connect those dots, considering how movies often reflect real life and directors sometimes project their own fantasies onto their projects. Let's not forget, Spielberg isn't the first director to face the glare of controversy. For decades, Hollywood has been a breeding ground for secrets, scandals, and systemic abuse of power. And now, as Julia's courage reignites the conversation, many wonder, are we witnessing the beginning of the end for some of the most untouchable figures in cinema? Take Woody Allen, for instance, a filmmaker once revered for his intellectual, quirky storytelling in films like Annie Hall and Manhattan, but whose career has been shadowed by deeply disturbing allegations. The most notorious claims came from his adopted daughter, Dylan Farrow, who accused him of SA in the early 1990s. The allegations sparked a media firestorm and tore apart his once admired public image. Allen has vehemently denied these accusations, pointing to investigations that did not lead to charges, but the stain on his legacy remains, and for good reason.
I was assaulted. As a 7-year-old, I would have said he touched my private parts.
Okay.
Which I did say.
Beyond Dylan's allegations, Allen's controversial romantic history has only added fuel to the fire. His relationship with Soon-Yi Previn, the adopted daughter of his former partner Mia Farrow, remains one of Hollywood's most debated scandals. Allen and Previn's relationship began when she was a college student, and the discovery of their affair not only shocked Mia Farrow, but led to the infamous custody battle that aired their personal lives for the world to dissect. While Allen and Previn maintain that their relationship is legitimate and consensual, they've been married since 1997, the power dynamics and family ties involved have left many questioning the morality of the situation.
Their headline-making romantic relationship began when Previn was 21, while Allen was still in a relationship with her mother.
The controversy doesn't end there. Over the years, Allen's defenders and detractors have waged a cultural war over his place in Hollywood. High-profile actors like Scarlett Johansson and Diane Keaton have continued to support him, while others, including Timothée Chalamet and Greta Gerwig, have publicly distanced themselves. Many wonder how Allen still secures funding and casts A-list stars despite the baggage he carries. Adding to the suspicion, some theorists have speculated that Allen's survival in the industry is a testament to Hollywood's darker underbelly, a place where power and influence can protect even the most controversial figures. Critics argue that Allen's ability to thrive isn't just about his talent, but a symptom of an industry willing to overlook troubling behavior for the sake of profit and prestige. In recent years, the #MeToo movement has reignited scrutiny of Allen's past, with Dylan Farrow speaking out more forcefully than ever. Farrow has accused Hollywood of enabling her alleged AR, and her public advocacy has shone a light on the systemic culture of silence surrounding powerful men like Allen. However, despite the backlash and boycotts, Allen has managed to release films internationally, leaning on Europe's more forgiving audiences to keep his career afloat. Bryan Singer, once celebrated for his work on films like X-Men, has faced allegations of misconduct and from multiple young men. Accusations range from inappropriate behavior at auditions to predatory actions at private parties. While Singer denies these claims, the backlash has cost him projects and tarnished his reputation. Singer, through his lawyer, told Vox the story is a homophobic smear piece that has been conveniently timed to take advantage of Bohemian Rhapsody's success, and that it was written by a homophobic journalist who has a bizarre obsession with me dating back to 1997. And who could forget James Toback, the man accused of SH by over 200 women? The allegations paint a grim picture of coercive and inappropriate behavior, yet Toback remains largely unaccountable as investigations drag on. His story serves as a grim reminder of just how deeply entrenched these power dynamics are in Hollywood. The way he presented it, it was like, this is how things are done. actress Adrienne LaValle told The Times in 2017, describing a 2008 hotel room encounter that ended with Tabak trying to rub his crotch against her leg. When she recoiled, he stood up and ejaculated in his pants, according to LaValle. I felt like a prostitute, an utter disappointment to myself, my parents, my friends, and I deserved not to tell anyone. Even celebrated directors like Joss Whedon, beloved for his work on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and The Avengers, haven't escaped scrutiny. Cast and crew from his projects have accused him of creating toxic, abusive environments on set, with claims of bullying and misogyny tarnishing his once pristine reputation. Whedon's public apology came too little, too late, leaving his career in shambles. But the revelations don't stop there. Quentin Tarantino, known for his gritty, groundbreaking films, has faced backlash for mistreating Uma Thurman during the making of Kill Bill. Thurman revealed that Tarantino pressured her into performing a dangerous stunt that resulted in serious injury. Although he apologized, the incident has cast a shadow over his career and raises questions about how far directors will go in the name of art. Samuel went on to emphasize the significance of the context in which Quentin Tarantino employs the word within his scripts. He also explained that he had grown up in a society where people frequently used the N-word due to cultural norms. He also mentioned that when referring to a specific historical period, it made sense to use such language, despite some complaints. He questioned what other descriptive terms Quentin should use since there were limited options for describing Black people during that era.
I know Americans don't like talking about slavery in a real kind of way. They act like it was a very short period of our history that, wasn't as bad as you people make it out to be.
Samuel further remarked that even in recent times, he's observed instances where people use the N-word in certain contexts. He noted situations where, for example, 3 Asian or Hispanic individuals might be conversing, indicating that the culture has created specific boundaries regarding when it's considered acceptable to use the word. He said, "You can use it in your music, but I don't know how much you can use it in your cinema. You can say it 80 times in one song, but if Quentin says it 40 times or 102 times in a movie, it's wrong. You can't have it both ways." He continued by asserting that there is often little objection to the way the N-word was used in older films like The Godfather. He argued that its usage in such movies was faithful to the era they depicted, much like in Quentin's films. Furthermore, he stated unequivocally that his friend Quentin is not a racist. "You have to wonder why he writes roles for me that are intelligent. All my characters have always been almost the smartest person in the room." Interviewer Peter Travers inquired whether Samuel L. Jackson had engaged in such a discussion with Spike Lee or attempted to facilitate a resolution between Lee and Quentin Tarantino.
I have no idea. I just think that the fact that I did so much theater and I loved language and I spent a lot of my...
Reportedly, he hadn't had such a conversation with Spike Lee. According to him, there was a point when he attempted to persuade Spike to attend the premiere of The Hateful Eight. People suggest that Spike had conditioned his attendance on Quentin also going to the premiere of Chi-Raq. However, Samuel was unable to coordinate the dates for these premieres, so the exchange didn't materialize. He also expressed uncertainty about whether this matter held significant importance for either of them.
In my mind, I'd seen him as Lee Van Cleef for a very long time. Yeah. So when he finally got to the Lee Van Cleef thing, I was like, okay, now we're finally on the same page.
Ultimately, Samuel L. Jackson remarked that Spike Lee has consistently lived life on his own terms, and that he himself doesn't have the ability to alter Spike's perspective on things. He also acknowledged that he can't influence Quentin Tarantino's opinions about Spike. He said, "I think Quentin respects Spike as a filmmaker, but I don't know if Spike has that same feeling about Quentin because I don't have that conversation. But Spike's my friend, Quentin's my friend." The industry's reckoning is long overdue, and Julia Roberts' bravery in exposing Steven Spielberg and other directors could very well be the match that ignites an inferno. If these powerful figures in Hollywood aren't beyond reproach, then who is? One person wrote, "The more I hear about Hollywood, the more I'm grossed out by that industry. It just seems to be a big swamp of SA-altists and pedo apologists." Another one added, "Damn, like who isn't a Hollywood creep at this point?" Hollywood's golden age of secrecy is crumbling, one name at a time. The real question is, how many more will fall before the industry finally cleans up its act? The world is watching, and the silence is breaking. That's it for today. See you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.